When money was no object and size was everything, railroads built machines so massive they defied common sense. These locomotives consumed fortunes in coal, required armies to maintain, and pushed engineering to its absolute limits. Today we're counting down the 20 biggest and most expensive locomotives ever built. The Southern Pacific AC9 was California's answer to impossible terrain. Lima built 12 of these coal-burning Yellowstones in 1939, each stretching nearly 80 feet long and weighing 338 tons without their tenders. SP needed something different from their famous cab forwards for the demanding but tunnel-free lines through Arizona and New Mexico. The AC9S delivered with their 2884 wheel arrangement, producing over 123,000 pounds of tractive effort. But here's where things got interesting. The railroad eventually converted all 12 to burn oil, a massive undertaking requiring complete redesign of the firing system, replacement of stoker mechanisms, and tender modifications. Each locomotive consumed roughly 600 gallons of fuel per hour under full load. The AC9S worked primarily on SP's Sunset route, hauling heavy freights through the desert southwest until dieselization rendered them obsolete in the 1950s. Despite relatively short careers, they represented significant investments in both construction and costly conversion work. None survived into preservation, making them among the rarest of the great Yellowstone types built for American railroads. The Baltimore and Ohio EM1 class arrived during World War II when the railroad desperately wanted diesels, but the War Production Board said otherwise. Baldwin delivered 30 of these massive 2884 Yellowstones between 1944 and 1945, each weighing approximately 628,000 pounds. The B&O hadn't asked for steam power, but what they received turned out remarkably capable. These locomotives were designed for the mountainous Cumberland Division, where grades exceeded 2% and tight. Curves challenged every piece of rolling stock. The EM1S featured roller bearings throughout, an expensive upgrade that reduced maintenance and improved reliability. At 40 to 50 miles per hour, they developed over 6,700 horsepower, among the most powerful on any American railroad. Tenders weighed 442,000 pounds fully loaded, carrying 22,000 gallons of water and 25 tons of coal. One EM1 derailed catastrophically in 1947, killing the engineer and leading to restrictions on passenger service. By 1960, all 30 had been retired. The EM1S cost roughly $250,000 each, equivalent to several $1 million today, their brief careers testament to how quickly diesel transformed American railroading. The Duluth, Misabe, and Iron Range Railway operated some of the most powerful Yellowstones ever constructed. Baldwin delivered 18 of these 2884 giants between 1941 and 1943, with deliberately extreme specifications. The DM&IR hauled iron ore from Minnesota's Iron Range to Lake Superior ports. Their M3 and M4 class locomotives generated 140,000 pounds of tractive effort, exceeding even the famous Union Pacific big boys in raw pulling power. At nearly 700,000 pounds without tenders, these machines represented serious financial commitments. The railroad specified all-weather cabs because Minnesota winters could drop temperatures to 40 below. Centipede tenders, riding on 14 wheels, carried 26,000 gallons of water and 26 tons of coal. What made these locomotives remarkable was their reliability in demanding service. The Denver and Rio Grande Western borrowed several during World War II and reported them among the finest locomotives they had ever operated. 3 DM&IR Yellowstones survive today in Minnesota, preserved reminders of when raw power trumped operating costs. The railroad operated these machines until 1963, among the last big steam in regular American service. Northern Pacific Railway ordered the very first Yellowstone-type locomotive in 1928, and it was the largest steam locomotive in the world when delivered. American Locomotive Company built this prototype 2884 weighing 715,000 pounds and stretching over 80 feet long. Northern Pacific needed exceptional power for their Yellowstone division, where long grades and poor quality rosebud coal created operational headaches. The massive firebox, with 182 square feet of great area, was designed for burning this low-quality fuel. But here's where economics became problematic. The locomotive's enormous appetite for coal and water made it expensive to operate, and poor combustion meant it never achieved theoretical efficiency. Northern Pacific ordered 11 additional Yellowstones from Baldwin, bringing their fleet to 12, but results remained disappointing. These locomotives could haul impressive tonnage, but consumed fuel at rates that challenged infrastructure. Each cost approximately $175,000 in 1928 dollars, substantial investments that never fully paid off. By the early 1950s, all 12 had been scrapped, leaving no survivors of the original Yellowstone design that gave the entire type its name. The Pennsylvania Railroad's Class T1 duplex locomotives were supposed to revolutionize passenger railroading, but became some of the most controversial steam engines ever built. Between 1942 and 1946, the railroad constructed 52 of these sleek 4-4-4-4 machines at Altoona Works and through Baldwin. Raymond Loewy designed their distinctive shark nose appearance, creating what many consider the most beautiful American steam locomotives. Each T1 cost approximately $310,000. The idea seemed sound on paper. Splitting driving wheels into two groups allowed lighter reciprocating parts, reducing hammer blow and theoretically permitting higher speeds. T1S demonstrated they could exceed 100 miles per hour while hauling heavy passenger trains. But operational reality proved catastrophic. The duplex arrangement made wheel slip difficult to detect, and crews reported rear drivers spinning without warning at highway speeds. The locomotives earned reputations as slippery and maintenance intensive. By 1951, all 52 had been retired, careers barely 5 years long. The T1 Trust is currently constructing a replica, hoping modern engineering can solve problems that defeated original designers. None survived scrapping. The Union Pacific Challenger represented a breakthrough in articulated design when introduced in 1936. American Locomotive Company built 105 of these 4664 giants across 5 classes, creating one of the most successful large steam locomotives ever conceived. Each weighed approximately 537 tons fully loaded and stretched nearly 122 feet from coupler to coupler. What made them remarkable was their combination of power and speed. Previous articulated locomotives had been confined to slow freight service because running gear couldn't handle high speeds. The Challengers changed that equation entirely. With 69-inch driving wheels and 280 pounds boiler pressure, these machines could cruise at 60 miles per hour while hauling massive freight trains. Otto Jabelman refined the design significantly after 1941, incorporating lessons from the larger Big Boy. Heavy Challengers weighed roughly 627,900 pounds, with tenders adding 446,000 pounds when loaded. Construction costs varied, but each represented roughly $200,000 to $250,000. 6 were diverted to the Denver and Rio Grande Western during World War II. Only 2 Challengers survive today, including UP3985, currently undergoing restoration at the Railroading Heritage of Midwest America. The Erie Triplex locomotives represented the most ambitious attempt to maximize tractive effort in a single engine. Baldwin constructed 3 2-8-8-8-2 machines between 1914 and 1916, each featuring unprecedented 24 driving wheels. The first, named Matt H. Shea, generated over 160,000 pounds of tractive effort, numbers exceeding any steam locomotive before or since. Baldwin's engineers placed a third set of drivers under the tender, creating a locomotive where every axle contributed to traction. The design was intended to haul 640 freight cars, nearly 5 miles of rolling stock. But here's the fundamental problem. The boiler couldn't produce steam fast enough to feed 6 enormous cylinders at speeds exceeding 10 miles per hour. Triplexes could move staggering loads from standing starts, but ran out of breath almost immediately. Erie relegated them to helper service on Susquehanna Hill, where phenomenal starting tractive effort proved useful. Another issue emerged as the tender burned coal and water, reducing weight on rear drivers. The Virginian Railway ordered a similar locomotive, which performed even worse. All 4 triplexes were scrapped by 1933, noble experiments proving some problems couldn't be solved by adding more wheels. The Pennsylvania Railroad S1 was the longest and heaviest rigid-frame reciprocating steam locomotive ever constructed. Completed in 1939, this single experimental 6446 duplex stretched 140 feet, 2.5 inches, and weighed over 1,060,000 pounds fully loaded. Raymond Loewy designed its streamlined Art Deco shell, creating arguably the most visually stunning steam locomotive in American history. The railroad spent $669,780 constructing this behemoth, equivalent to $15 million today. Pennsylvania wanted a locomotive capable of hauling 1,200-ton passenger trains at 100 miles per hour. Test runs suggested speeds exceeding 133 miles per hour, though records remain disputed. But extraordinary length created severe limitations. The S1 couldn't negotiate curves on most of Pennsylvania's system and was restricted to service between Chicago and Crestline, Ohio. The 84-inch driving wheels, among the largest ever used, created maintenance headaches. It was displayed at the 1939 World's Fair. Heat in the enclosed cab was brutal, and crews struggled with visibility. The S1 was scrapped in 1949, its revolutionary design ultimately impractical for real-world operations. The Pennsylvania Railroad Q2 class achieved the highest horsepower ever recorded for any steam locomotive. 26 of these 464 duplex freight locomotives were constructed at Altoona Works between 1944 and 1945. During static testing, Q2 number 6175 produced 7,987 indicated horsepower, a record that still stands for reciprocating steam. The prototype cost $428,598. These were the largest non-articulated steam locomotives ever constructed, designed to move heavy freight at transformative speeds. The Q2 could haul 125 freight cars at 50 miles per hour, performance exceeding anything Pennsylvania's conventional locomotives could match. But the duplex design carried inherent problems maintenance crews couldn't overcome. The rear engine tended to slip on starts because less weight rested on those drivers. Despite automatic slip control, crews found the locomotives unpredictable. Maintenance costs substantially exceeded conventional J1 class 2-10-4s, which offered comparable performance with far simpler machinery. All 26 Q2s were retired by 1951, beaten not by lack of power, but by economics and diesel technology. None survived into preservation, making these record-breaking locomotives extinct. The Chesapeake and Ohio Alleghany class ranks among the most powerful steam locomotives ever built, rivaling and by some measures exceeding the Union Pacific Big Boy. Lima constructed 60 of these massive 2-666 giants between 1941 and 1948, each weighing approximately 771,000 pounds and generating up to 7,500 horsepower. The first batch cost around $230,600 per locomotive, while the final 1948 order reached $392,500 each. The Alleghanies were designed for hauling heavy coal trains over steep grades between Hinton, West Virginia, and Clifton Forge, Virginia. With 110,211 pounds of tractive effort and the heaviest axle loading of any steam locomotive at 86,700 pounds, these machines moved staggering tonnage through the Allegheny Mountains. 23 were equipped with steam heat for occasional passenger service. During testing, one demonstrated horsepower approaching 7,500, among the highest ever recorded. Lima had miscalculated the weight, and crews discovered locomotives were thousands of pounds heavier than specified, sparking disputes over compensation. One Allegany suffered catastrophic boiler explosion in 1953, killing the crew. Only 2 survive today. The Pennsylvania Railroad S2 steam turbine was the most radical attempt to keep steam competitive with diesels. Baldwin and Westinghouse delivered this single experimental locomotive in 1944, creating the only 686 wheel arrangement ever built. The S2 used direct drive steam turbines instead of conventional cylinders, with gearing transmitting power to the center driving wheels. Weight exceeded 1 million pounds fully loaded. The turbine concept showed promise at speed. During testing, the S2 achieved 110 miles per hour while hauling 17 passenger cars, maintaining 100 miles per hour for 12 consecutive minutes. Above 30 miles per hour, the turbine proved remarkably efficient. Below that speed, steam consumption became catastrophic. The locomotive would devour fuel sitting still, and operating costs mounted rapidly in station stops and yard movements. Pennsylvania assigned the S2 to prestige runs, including the Broadway Limited between Chicago and Crestline, Ohio. Maintenance crews found the turbine machinery demanding. The locomotive suffered severe turbine damage in 1949 and was stored rather than repaired. It was scrapped in 1953 after running only 103,000 miles, its technology defeated by railroad operating realities. The Norfolk and Western Y6B represented the absolute pinnacle of compound mallet development. The Roanoke shops constructed 30 of these magnificent 2882 locomotives between 1948 and 1952. The final steam locomotives built by any American, railroad for domestic service. Each weighed approximately 582,900 pounds and could produce 170,000 pounds of tractive effort with high-pressure steam admitted to the low-pressure cylinders. The Y6B could haul 13,500 tons of coal on level track at 25 miles per hour, generating 5,500 indicated horsepower while doing it. Norfolk and Western calculated these locomotives cost substantially less per ton-mile than diesels on their coal-hauling routes. The railroad was the last major carrier to abandon steam, operating Y6BS until 1960, while other railroads had dieselized years earlier. Roller bearings on all axles reduced maintenance, while compound expansion provided exceptional fuel economy. Number 2, 1197, received modifications that boosted tractive effort to 170,000 pounds. None survived preservation despite their significance. The final Y6B was completed 3 years after Baldwin built America's last domestic steam locomotive, making these machines both a culmination and ending. The Union Pacific DD-40X. Centennial diesel locomotives were the largest and most powerful diesels ever constructed. Electromotive Division built 47 of these double-engine giants between 1969 and 1971, each containing two 16-cylinder prime movers, producing combined 6,600 horsepower. The DD-40X stretched 98 feet 5 inches, so long that frames had to be fabricated by outside contractor John Moore Company, because EMD's factory couldn't handle them. Each locomotive cost $551,168 in 1969 dollars, equivalent to over $4 million today. Union Pacific numbered them 6,900 through 6,946 to commemorate the 1869 Golden Spike Centennial. The first unit, number 6,900, was rushed to completion for anniversary celebrations in Utah. These machines represented Union Pacific's continuing quest for maximum power after decades of giant steam and gas turbine locomotives. Fuel tanks held 8,000 gallons, the largest of any diesel. Weight reached 545,000 pounds, requiring special attention to track conditions. Most were retired by 1986, when maintenance costs exceeded benefits. 13 survive in museums and parks. Number 6,936 remained operational until donated to Railroading Heritage of Midwest America in 2022, where it was returned to service in 2023. The Virginian Railway XA Triplex was the most spectacular failure in steam locomotive history. Baldwin built this sole 28884 in 1916, placing it with the Virginian entirely on experimental basis. The design featured the same triple expansion concept as Erie's triplexes, but with a four-wheel trailing truck under the tender engine unit. Tractive effort exceeded 160,000 pounds, theoretically the most powerful locomotive in the world. Reality proved devastating. The Virginian's grades were steeper than Erie's, and the XA couldn't exceed 5 miles per hour before exhausting steam supply completely. The boiler simply couldn't generate enough steam to feed all 6 cylinders working at any practical speed. Unlike Erie's locomotives, which found limited success as pushers, the Virginian Triplex was virtually useless. Baldwin's engineers stayed with the locomotive attempting modifications, but nothing worked. The railroad returned it to Baldwin after less than 2 years. Baldwin dismantled the disaster and rebuilt components into 2 separate locomotives, a 2880 and a 282 Mikado. Both rebuilds served until 1953. The XA represents the outer limit of steam locomotive ambition, proof that some ideas fail regardless of engineering talent applied. The Norfolk and Western John Henry was steam power's final stand against diesel domination. This enormous steam turbine electric locomotive was completed in 1954, measuring 161 feet and weighing over 1.2 million pounds. Norfolk and Western named it after the legendary steel-driving man who raced against a steam drill, appropriate for a machine designed to outperform diesels. The concept was ambitious beyond anything previously attempted. Coal-fired boilers generated steam for turbines that powered electric traction motors, combining steam generation with electric transmission. The John Henry could produce approximately 4,500 horsepower at the rail. But the technology created maintenance nightmares. Coal ash infiltrated turbine blades and electrical equipment relentlessly. Cooling systems struggled to dissipate heat from both steam and electrical components in the same space. The locomotive spent more time in shops than on the rails. Norfolk and Western invested heavily, trying to perfect the design, but couldn't solve fundamental problems. The John Henry was scrapped in 1957, having run less than 3 years. It proved that even coal-rich railroads couldn't make steam technology competitive with diesel. The Chesapeake and Ohio M1 class steam turbine electrics represented the most expensive locomotives ever ordered for passenger service. Lima built 3 of these streamlined giants in 1947 and 1948, each stretching over 154 feet and weighing 856,500 pounds. The C&O spent roughly $900,000 per locomotive, equivalent to $12 million today. The railroad intended these machines for proposed Washington-Cincinnati streamlined passenger trains that never materialized. Like John Henry, the M1s used coal-fired boilers, driving steam turbines connected to electric traction motors. The theory promised diesel-like characteristics with coal-burning economy. Reality delivered chronic mechanical failures and prohibitive maintenance costs. Coal dust contaminated everything electrical. Turbine blades eroded under harsh operating conditions. Heat accumulated inside the enclosed bodies to levels that endangered crews and equipment. Testing revealed that the locomotives consumed considerably more fuel than projected while producing less power. The C&O never operated them in regular service, storing them almost immediately after delivery. All 3 were scrapped by 1950, their brief existence representing one of the most expensive failed experiments in railroad history. The Southern Pacific cab forward locomotives were among the most unusual and expensive steam power ever built. Between 1909 and 1944, SP ordered 256 of these unique articulated locomotives with cabs positioned ahead of boilers rather than behind. The final series, the AC-12 class built between 1943 and 1944, represented the ultimate development. These massive 4882 machines weighed 657,000 pounds each and cost approximately $225,000 per locomotive. The cab-forward design wasn't aesthetic choice, but operational necessity. SP's Sierra Nevada crossings included miles of tunnels and snow sheds where conventional steam locomotives asphyxiated crews with their own exhaust. Placing the cab ahead meant fresh air for crews, even in the longest tunnels. Oil firing made the reversed arrangement practical, since fuel could be piped forward from tenders. The AC-12S produced 124,300 pounds of tractive effort while burning approximately 600 gallons of oil per hour. They hauled heavy freights over Donner Pass until dieselization ended their careers in the 1950s. SP scrapped nearly all of them, making survivors extremely rare. Only one cab forward, number 4294, escaped destruction and is preserved at the California State Railroad Museum. The Russian P-36 class represented the largest passenger locomotives ever built in the Soviet Union and among the most expensive steam power constructed anywhere after World War II. Kolomna Works manufactured 251 of these elegant 484s between 1950 and 1956, each weighing approximately 135 tons and capable of hauling express trains at 125 kilometers per hour. The P-36 featured distinctive streamlined styling with sky blue boiler jackets that made them recognizable across Soviet railways. Construction costs were substantial by Soviet standards, reflecting advanced technology including roller bearings, mechanical stokers, and sophisticated valve gear. These locomotives were assigned to the most important passenger routes, including Trans-Siberian expresses covering thousands of kilometers. The P-36s operated in temperatures ranging from Siberian winters at -40 degrees to Central Asian summers exceeding 40 degrees Celsius. Unlike American railroads, Soviet railways continued operating steam into the 1970s on some routes. Several P-36s survive in operational condition today, occasionally hauling special excursions. These machines represent the final flowering of Soviet steam technology, built when Western railroads had already abandoned steam. The Chesapeake and Ohio Allegany H8, number 1601, holds a unique distinction as the heaviest steam locomotive ever weighed under controlled conditions. When Lima delivered this 2666 in December 1941, railroad personnel discovered it exceeded specifications by several thousand pounds, eventually confirming weight approaching 778,000 pounds. This made it heavier than any Union Pacific big boy. The discrepancy sparked investigation and compensation, disputes between Lima and the railroad. Subsequent weighings of other early Alleghanies confirmed the pattern, establishing the H8 class as the heaviest reciprocating steam locomotives ever constructed. The financial implications were significant because railroads calculated payments partly on weight. Lima absorbed additional costs. The operational implications proved positive since extra weight improved adhesion on the steep grades these locomotives were designed to conquer. Number 1601 and its sisters demonstrated their worth hauling coal from West Virginia mountains to tidewater ports. The Alleghanies routinely handled trains that would have required double-heading with other power. Number 1601 was scrapped in 1956, but two sister locomotives survive as monuments to when bigger genuinely meant better. The Union Pacific Big Boy remains the most famous and arguably the most successful of all giant steam locomotives. American Locomotive Company built 25 of these 4884 articulated giants between 1941 and 1944, each costing $265,174, equivalent to nearly $5 million today. At £772,250 for the engine alone and £1.2 million with tender, They were among the heaviest locomotives ever constructed. The Big Boy measured 132 feet, 9 inches from coupler to coupler, the longest engine body of any reciprocating steam locomotive. Union Pacific needed these machines to haul 3,600-ton freight trains over the Wasatch Range without helper locomotives, something no previous power could accomplish. Big Boys delivered, exceeding design specifications while proving remarkably reliable in demanding mountain service. An unknown Alco worker scrawled the nickname in chalk on the first locomotive's smokebox, and it stuck permanently. 8 Big Boys survive, more than any other class of super power steam. Number 4014 was restored to operation in 2019 after a 5-year, multi-million-dollar effort by Union Pacific. It now tours the system as the world's largest operating steam locomotive, a living monument to when railroads solved problems by building bigger. And that's all, folks. These 20 locomotives represent the absolute pinnacle of size and expense in railroad history. Machines built when ambition exceeded economics. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future updates. Here's another video I've specially selected for you. See you next time.